Krishna. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, and welcome to today's session. How are you doing? I pray that all is well with you and your families at this time. So how are things going? I'm praying and hoping that you're able to manage and understand the events of life as they are unfolding and trying to go through it with strength at this difficult time when we're losing so many loved ones, when we're losing so many friends and colleagues, relatives, children, parents, spouses. It's not an easy time. But as human beings, we also come to a point in life where we try to understand what's going on and why is it that these events and things occur. We have the capacity as human beings to ask these questions and try to get answers for it. So as we're assessing this about life, in the event of losing a loved one due to the coronavirus, or also due to the effects of the virus upon us as people in terms of jobs, in terms of livelihood, in terms of security, home security, in terms of just providing for my family, just taking care of my family as basic needs. All these things are being questioned right now. All these things are not normal anymore. We see we are in a very difficult moment to try to assess this. So as human beings, we always try to question the deeper reality of things. And ultimately, this is where the healing takes place. And we're using the case study of Arjuna at the moment in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is empathetic to what has happened to him. He's sympathetic and is also trying to make him understand that, Arjun, if you want healing, then you also have to understand that life is a process and that there are different things that's going to happen to you in life, and you're going to be very hurt by certain incidents if you don't apply knowledge to it. But how do we then, after the emotional moment is over, how do we heal then? How do we genuinely heal? So at that moment, Krishna is telling Arjuna, Arjuna, you need some philosophy to understand the process of life. You need to understand how this is happening to everyone, not only human beings, but every living entity on this planet goes through these processes of life. And as human beings, we have the ability to try to understand it. So this is why the principles that Krishna is teaching Arjuna here is the basic principles to understand life. And I feel that those basic principles of understanding the process of life is relevant to every human being. So therefore, we're using the Bhagavad Gita as our case study to try to understand what is it, to try to unravel this mystery of life, and what is it that I haven't understood. Because right now I'm in so much pain and lamentation, because my current situation is that I'm in so much of pain and lamentation due to the way I thought my life is meant to be lived. So what is it that I can understand about the process of life through this message of the Bhagavad Gita? So today we are on verse number 25. Avyaktoyam achintyoyam avikaryoyam uchate tasmat evam viditvainam nanu sochitam maharasi. Translation: it is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. So we were discussing yesterday up to 15 different descriptions of the soul that was given over the previous verses. And today we're getting a few more. So today we're hearing here invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. If the soul is inconceivable, then what have we been doing over the past few days? We're trying to understand the soul, and now Krishna is saying it's inconceivable. How do we understand this contradiction? So we see it's not a contradiction. Krishna is describing from the spiritual platform. and Arjuna is understanding from the material platform. So when Krishna is saying it's inconceivable, he's trying to say, Arjuna, don't think that by any material experimental measures that you're going to understand the soul in that way. And that's what our scientists are trying to understand, right? They're trying to use experimental measures of matter, and they've gone right down to the atom, but they didn't find the soul. Why? Because it's not a substance that can be seen through a microscope. It's antimatter. It's anti-material. It's not a material substance. It's a spiritual substance. The soul is made up of spiritual substance. Therefore, in the body level of consciousness that we are, we can only understand the soul by inference. We can only understand the soul by symptomatic of the soul. If we look for it directly with the microscope, you're not going to see it, because the substance is not material. So this is why Krishna is saying it's inconceivable. So see this beautiful counseling technique that Krishna uses. He first started with emotional comfort in the 10th, 11th, 12th verses, 13th verse, in that way. And then he went to logic, which is another system of knowledge. And then he made it relevant through inference. And now he's gone back to addressing Arjuna's emotions. Because at the end of the day, we are people. We are human, and we feel pain, we feel grief. So what is the value of Krishna speaking all these things about knowledge and about the soul if it's not going to be able to clear the grief? If it's not going to be able to clear the lamentation? This is the quintessential point, that knowledge must be able to change our life. Knowledge must be able to help us understand life better. So by making this point, Krishna is saying, Arjun, if you're really going to help yourself get out of this lamentation, you're going to have to acquire knowledge. You're going to have to acquire some system of philosophy that can help you understand what has happened to you right now, what is going on right now, how to understand the process of life. Therefore, knowledge is so important. So I'd like to share this with you personally as well, devotees, that I know you're going through a rough time right now, be it at work, be it with your family, be it with friends, be it with so many situations in life. You just want a moment of stability, right? So Krishna is addressing this point to Arjuna and saying, Arjun, you only can get stability if you understand. If you don't have knowledge or information about what's going on, you're not going to get answers to the questions that you have about life. Why has this happened to you? You're not going to get answers to all the why questions you have about life. You're just going to be going on in a loop on an emotional level, and you're not going to get any stability from that. If you really want stability in life, you have to acquire knowledge. You have to understand what has happened to you. So again, Krishna has brought back all this knowledge we've been discussing about the soul to its valuable point. How do I get rid of this lamentation that I'm experiencing right now at the bodily level of consciousness? You can only get rid of it through knowledge, through understanding what's going on. So Prabhupada starts in the purport here. He says, as described previously, the magnitude of the soul is so small for our material calculation that he cannot be seen even by the most powerful microscopes. So we discussed this order of magnitude, that it's not that the soul is so small that we can't see it, because we know microscopes today can go right down to the atomic level. There are atomic microscopes. So it's not that they don't have the technology, but they're looking for something spiritual using a material equipment. You're not going to see it. You're not going to be able to see it, because the substance, that equipment is meant to see material things. How do you see something spiritual? Through a material microscope. So it's not that the technology has not been developed. So just to let you know, there are technology out there. It's able to infer through magnetic field study and other that the soul actually exists. So inference is the method of study that we can use to understand the soul. And in circles of education, this is called hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is the study of knowledge by inference, by inferring, by seeing a certain symptom, we can thus infer that this is the result. So you remember the other terminology we gave, epistemology. Epistemology was the study of knowledge. So hermeneutics now is the study of inference. Because remember, we're getting our knowledge through the senses. Actually, there's a term for this as well called informatics. Informatics means the study of the information that is coming through the senses. So information in itself is not knowledge, it's information. It becomes knowledge when it is processed by the brain, when it's interpreted in 3 different ways. And what are those 3 ways? One is by direct sense perception, it's interpreted. Secondly, it's by logic or inference, where we can observe something and therefore infer that this is the result. And the third level is disseminating knowledge through an authentic source, which is the process in which the Vedas has come. So this disseminating of knowledge through an authentic source is called the parampara system, the system of passing down knowledge right from the spiritual realm, the Supreme Being, through a systematic chain of realized spiritual masters who themselves have been disciples. And therefore that disciplic chain of perfect authentic knowledge, starting from the Supreme Spiritual Being right down to the current modern level of society. So the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita that we're presenting comes in that disciplic chain. Srila Prabhupada is the 33rd generation within that disciplic chain of realized spiritual masters. So we continue. Therefore, he is invisible. So Srila Prabhupada brings us this point about being visible, visibility. So it's not that the soul is in stealth mode, but the substance of the soul is not visible by material equipment. So he goes on, as far as the soul's existence is concerned, no one can establish his existence experimentally beyond the proof of the Shruti or the Vedic wisdom. So again, we're using the system of knowledge or hermeneutics or the system of inference. And by that experimentally, then we can understand that the soul exists. So we've discussed 3 systems of knowledge: direct perception, inference, and knowledge that is disseminated in an authentic way. So the inference method is an acceptable system of knowledge, but again it leads itself to imperfection, because we could interpret something by our observation thinking that it's so, but in reality it has a different foundation. So it lends itself to imperfection because it's stemming from what the senses are observing. So the much more authentic system of knowledge would be a bona fide authentic system of realized spiritual masters who pass on the knowledge generation after generation. In that way, that's a much more authentic source of knowledge. So let's have a look at this video.
What is the soul? Where is it? Can you measure it? Touch it? Recreate it? Do near-death experiences, reincarnation, and unexplained brain activity indicate the existence of the soul? These are questions that have intrigued and haunted people since they first walked the earth. Today, in the 21st century, experts are closing in on some answers, using new technology and new understandings to unlock the secrets of the soul.
So he continues, we have to accept this truth because there is no other source of understanding the existence of the soul, although it is a fact by perception. So perception has its limitation because it's done by inference. We're inferring that such and such is real because we are seeing it with our eyes or hearing it with our ears. Therefore, we are inferring that it is so. But by reality, it could be different, right? It could have a different experience. So is it reality then? No. So you can see it may lend itself to misinterpretation.
So death means when this body is useless, you do not come to this body, you accept another body. This is called death. But the fact is this, that you are changing from this body to this body to this body. Therefore the conclusion should be, after this body I will accept another body. And that's the fact. As you have accepted in this life from one body to another body, there is a process how to accept it. Similarly, under the same process, you accept another body when this body is no longer useful. Just like at night, you give up this body, you take your subtle body and you go to somewhere. You are sleeping in your room, but you are working in a different place. Don't you do that? So, because this body is still useful, therefore you come to back again this body, and in the morning you wake up with this body. So death means when this body is useless, you do not come to this body, you accept another body. This is called death. That subtle body takes you from this body to the womb of another mother by nature's direction, that this soul shall get this kind of body. So the soul is entered in the womb of another mother's body, and then the body is prepared by the mother's blood and flesh, and when the body is sufficiently capable of working itself, then it comes again and begins its work. This is birth and death. The soul is eternal. Therefore, a sober man should think, why should I change my body? Why this trouble I shall take? That is human sense. If I am eternal, why not my eternal body? Eternal existence, why shall I die? This is human sense. Unless one comes to this understanding, he is animal. Because animal, by nature's law, is going on. He does not know.
Therefore, the best and most perfect way is to pass down the knowledge in an authentic, bona fide way. He goes on, there are many things we have to accept solely on grounds of superior authority. No one can deny the existence of his father based upon the authority of his mother. There is no source of understanding the identity of the father except by the authority of the mother. We're familiar that technology has developed a lot and that now they can do DNA tests, right, to prove. But the point being, has they ever done a test that has been imperfect? Yes, because it's prone to mistake. You're prone to make a mistake if you're using that method. We say, okay, it's 99.99% accurate, but is it 100% accurate? Because it's a material system and it's prone to have its defects. But if you hear from a source that is perfect, then it's authentic. Similarly, there is no source of understanding the soul except by studying the Vedas. In other words, the soul is inconceivable by human experimental knowledge. So Prabhupada brings up a very interesting point, that don't miss this point, that we're using all the senses, we're using inference, we're using disseminating knowledge, all of this. Why? Because we want to have meaning, we want to understand. So if that is your goal, if your goal is to make sense of what's going on, wouldn't you then be open to a system of knowledge that can give you that? What is the best system of knowledge that can give you that? We have 3 systems right now. So if you really actually want to understand and you're a student of knowledge, then you'll see which system gives the best knowledge, right? Because your motivation is to understand. Therefore, Prabhupada is saying, if your motivation is to understand, then see which one is giving the most authentic, best system of knowledge. If you're only stuck with the eyes, if you only want to see and accept knowledge because it must be understood by the senses, then you're limiting yourself to the other 2 systems of knowledge. And then if you're only stuck with inference, then do your experiments. Remember, we studied this, the Tattvadarshi, na sato vijate bhavo, na bhavo vijate satam, ubayorapi dristvantvas, tvanayas Tattvadarshibhi. That this Tattvadarshi is a scientist. He understands both. Remember that definition? Remember that verse that came up? He understands both. He is trying to understand na sato vidyate bhavo. What is the nature of that which is not permanent? And na bhavo vidyate satam. What is the nature of that which is permanent? And he's trying to correlate the both. So he's not rejecting inference or direct sense perception, but he's saying the disseminating source of knowledge that the Vedas come in is more credible than the other 2. The soul is consciousness and conscious. That also is the statement of the Vedas, and we have to accept that. So you remember that statement that again and again, it's our nursery rhyme. Nityo nityo nam, chaitanas chaitana nam, ekho bahunam jo vidadati kaman. To say that both the soul and the Supreme Being are nitya, eternal. And both are chaitanas, both are conscious. But what is the difference? Ekho bahunam jo vidadati kaman. One is dependent on the other. That is the difference between the Supreme Being and who we are. We are dependent and He is independent. So he goes on, unlike the bodily changes, there is no change in the soul. As externally unchangeable, the soul remains atomic in comparison to the infinite Supreme Soul. The Supreme Soul is infinite and the atomic soul is infinitesimal. So here the comparison is given between the Supreme Soul and the living entity. That both are infinite, that both are eternal, and both are conscious. But what is the difference then? One is the supreme consciousness, the supreme living being. And we are the soul in this embodied state. We are only conscious of our body. So there is a difference. Our consciousness can only extend to the limits of our body. Whereas the supreme soul, the super consciousness, that consciousness can extend right through creation. That's why we attribute the qualities to Him of being omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent, all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-present. So this is the qualities of the Supreme Being. So us as infinitesimal, the most minute spark of the spiritual energy is us. Us at our level, we are only conscious of our body. And the Supreme Being has super consciousness. He is conscious of the whole of creation. Therefore, the infinitesimal soul, being unchangeable, can never become equal to the infinite soul or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So after describing all this, to equate the both will be incorrect. Because as the spirit soul, we are limited. The potency that we have only extends as far as this body. We can't be conscious, we can't be present, and we can't be knowing anything further than this body in experience. This concept is repeated in the Vedas in different ways just to confirm the stability of the conception of the soul. So again, stability. So this is the point of all knowledge, is to create stability. If we want to create stability in life, in understanding, in carrying out our duties in life, then we have to gain authentic knowledge, which makes us experience life through understanding, through knowledge. So he concludes here, repetition of something is necessary in order that we understand the matter thoroughly without error. So we've been going through extensively over the soul, right? In so many different ways, we've been extensively discussing, and within the next few verses, we'll complete the topic of the soul. But we don't want to get caught up in knowledge if we can't translate it or transform it into experience of life. So this is why all of these points are being discussed, to help us make sense and to create a platform of stability, steadiness, kutastha.